The French President Emmanuel Macron has called on Australia to lift its nuclear ban after the government rejected a nuclear pledge at the COP28 summit. The declaration to triple nuclear energy capacity globally by 2050 was endorsed by more than 20 countries at the UN Climate Change Conference. When asked by a 17-year-old Nuclear for Australia founder, Will Shackel, about nuclear energy's role in global plans to decarbonise, this is what the President had to say.
I hope that we will manage to lift the ban. I mean, nuclear energy is absolutely a necessity to succeed.
Yes.
For carbon neutrality in 2050.
Right, certainly.
So, I mean, now it's with the control of international atomic agency and with the best possible regulation. I think this is a fair and a good decision to relaunch nuclear capacities. So yes. I wish you the best. Be careful.
Couldn't really get that close with all the security there, but the opposition leader Peter Dutton has criticised Labor, claiming the Albanese government has isolated itself from AUKUS allies by not endorsing the pledge. Let's go live to the Nationals leader, David Littleproud now. David, thanks so much for your time. Interesting comments there from Emmanuel Macron. Given our history with the subs thing, he wasn't that happy about, but another perhaps dig at Australia, this time a different government, different PM.
Well, this one he's got right, and what we've believed a long time as Nationals and now as a coalition, that we should explore nuclear energy as a way to decarbonise our energy grid, to look at the options and simply, instead of having politicians yell and scream at each other about this, why don't we just let the market fight it out? Why don't we open it up and let the marketplace decide exactly whether nuclear energy can be developed here in this country? I think it can. I think we've got sovereignty of all our resources, and we won't have the material impact on the environment that's being torn down at the moment to put up all these wind towers and solar panels, as well as the transmission lines. We can plug them in to where existing coal-fired power stations are, and they're net zero. It just makes sense. And I already know of not just Deutsche Bank, who's come out and made it clear that they have private capital that's interested in going behind the meter. I've actually met coal miners that actually would build their own small-scale modular nuclear if the moratorium was lifted. That's all we're arguing over. Let's not argue, let's just let the market decide, and let's provide affordable, reliable energy that's net zero to the Australian people.
Yeah, but it's still going to take a while. It's not going to solve the immediate problems, is it?
Well, we've got to 2050. That's the only international commitment that we've made, and that's why we should get on with the job now. That's why there is a sense of urgency, and I'm proud of the fact that Peter Dutton has taken the Nationals' hand on this, because we have to have that conversation now. We have to open the marketplace up now to allow that investment and allow the lead-up time for SMRs or any other form of nuclear energy to be built in this country. That's why we should have that conversation now, and Chris Bowen keeps on telling us it's the most expensive form. Well, let's fight it out in the marketplace. Prove yourself right, Chris. Have the confidence of your conviction that this is the most expensive form of energy, and the market will determine that. But he hasn't got the courage. I think it's more about the internal Labor machinations. You saw what happened when we signed up to the nuclear submarines. But we're going to have nuclear capability in this country for those submarines. So why wouldn't we have a civil industry as well that gives us the option to explore zero emissions nuclear technology as part of the energy mix?
Okay, let's talk about the supermarkets now. It looks like there will be an inquiry looking at price gouging and cartel-like activity with the big supermarkets. Do you welcome this inquiry?
Well, I do, but it's really a bit of window dressing. We've been calling for some time for a price monitoring inquiry, not by politicians, but by the ACCC, to really get in underneath the bonnet of the practices of the big two Australian supermarkets and the big German, to make sure that Australian consumers, but also suppliers, particularly farmers, are being protected. We saw a 70% reduction in beef and sheep prices from June, and yet we've only seen an 8% reduction at the checkout. Someone's cleaning up, and that's Coles, Woolworths, Woolworths and the big German. That's who's cleaning it up. And so we need the ACCC to be the tough cop on the beat. And this Senate inquiry, doesn't actually compel the CEOs to turn up. They get invited. Whereas an ACCC price monitoring inquiry would compel the CEOs to turn up. It could be started. It should have already been started, and we could have actually had outcomes before Christmas, not after Christmas. And the Agriculture Minister's saying put a price hike on ham. Well, it's a little bit more than just ham, Murray. If you were in touch with the challenges of this cost of living crisis, you understand it's broader than just ham. When you look at the horticulture sector being done over. I mean, watermelons, they're getting about $1 a kilogram, yet Coles and Woolworths are charging $3 to $4. Now, they don't need processing.
Yeah.
They just go on the back of a truck from the paddock and end up in the supermarket. They are cleaning up. So we need new powers, and I welcome a broader review into competition policy, and I agree with Alan Fells that we should have divestiture powers on these supermarkets. We should have an independent arbiter that is cheap for suppliers as well to be able to have access to, because they very much fear retribution if they say anything bad about Coles and Woolworths, in that because they have such strong suppliers, 74% of the market, then they may be spurned. So this is where we need reform, and I've made it clear to Andrea Lee, the Competition Minister, that the Nationals have long wanted divestiture powers. We want big penalties, not $64,000 under the grocery code, but now $10 million starting as the starting price and going up for any offence, as well as those divestiture powers. We've done this to the energy sector. We've had big stick legislation. Let's do it for the supermarkets. And if they think then they say they're doing the right thing, well, they have nothing to fear. And the CEOs of these supermarkets should come out and welcome better regulatory reform around them so they can prove their innocence if they think they are so innocent. But instead, those CEOs have gone into hiding.
Well, just quickly on this, I have noticed that the big supermarkets create their own brands for commonly bought goods, and then they seem to be much cheaper than their competitors. Is that one thing that concerns you?
As well as the way in which they deal, particularly with suppliers, small family suppliers. They actually go and start their own line, and they ask farmers to make big capital outlays to actually buy properties and make investment, and then they simply tear them down or take away those contracts, and these farmers are left without being able to supply the product that they've been asked to produce. So it's unconscionable conduct. It's been going on for some time. There's too much power, and it's time. That's when a government should interfere in a marketplace, when there is a market imbalance, power imbalance, and even Alan Fells agrees. So I think it's time, and we'll be supportive of any changes the government wanted to make on that. We don't need an inquiry. We just need to get on with the job.
Just quickly, and perhaps most critically, neo-Nazis marching through the streets of Ballarat. It's extraordinary from yesterday, and it seems that there's little that can be done about it. Police didn't want to intervene, and the government at the moment is grappling to kind of figure out what laws apply to it.
Yeah, it's a sad indictment on our society that these people want to go out into the public and make these sort of symbolic gestures. We're just passing legislation now around the use of those symbols and salutes, but we need as a society to step up and actually call these people out. And I think it is important for legislators, both state and federal, to work through this as quickly as we can, because that sort of behaviour in our society, our great country, isn't welcome, and we should stand up. Now, I'm all for free speech, but there is a responsibility that everyone has when you have that free speech to actually make sure that you're using it wisely and you understand exactly the implications of what you're saying.
Yeah, free speech, but I note that all of these I think men didn't want to be identified, all of them with masks on. Somewhat cowardly as well. David Littleproud, we've got to leave it there. We'll see you soon though.
Thanks for having me.